The movie Gladiator, released in the year 2000, it introduced us to a fictional protagonist named Maximus Decimus Meridius, a soldier and the greatest general in the Roman Empire. The film over the years has been critically acclaimed as one of the best movies out there. It is a movie many can relate to, not necessarily from living in the time of ancient Rome, but from letting the viewers truly feel and understand the pain, struggle and life of Maximus, to carry the loss of someone close to your heart, to be forced to do brutal things you don't want to, and to experience betrayal of those who you thought were your friends. It's a gateway that many can relate to. You feel alive in it and present in the world of the movie, as it embodies the nature of war, destruction, gladiators, and some of the civilian life around the Colosseum. But Gladiator is not just a spectacle from the visuals and its ability to cater to the human emotions. It's also a study into the philosophical mind of the characters in the movie, particularly Maximus and Marcus Aurelius. While Maximus was a fictional character created by the writers, Marcus Aurelius, on the other hand, was not. The version of Marcus Aurelius that we see in the film is not a true, accurate representation of who he truly was back when he ruled Rome as an emperor for 2 decades, nearly 2,000 years ago. But Marcus, in the movie, still represents many of Marcus Aurelius' characteristics when he lived on this earth. He was known for his considerable gestures, kindness, greatness in leadership, staying wise and moral, being a skilled communicator, and his strong relation to the Stoic philosophy. In the film, the Stoic philosophy, through the words and mind of Marcus, is present in the many acts that Maximus undertakes. During Marcus Aurelius' reign over the Roman Empire, he often sat down after long days of conflict, which was fired at him from all ends of the political sphere at the time, and from the deadly Antonine plague that covered the city, or from the war ravaged beyond the walls of Rome. He took his time to sit down and write personal recordings only to himself. These recordings are today known as meditations. In this book, Marcus Aurelius wrote a plethora of notes, many of them speaking of his experiences with life and death, as well as nature and the ever-changing world around him. Incorporating Stoic philosophy in his writings, he used them to judge himself on his quest to become a better human being. Marcus Aurelius studied Stoicism since he was a young boy, and he used it to guide his judgment after being appointed Emperor of Rome. His choices during his rule led him to eventually be known as the Philosopher King and the last good Emperor of Rome. Maximus tells the stories and words of Marcus Aurelius. He honors his respectable friend, and we see how he chooses to act in the ways he endures many of the challenges and difficult circumstances in the film by embodying the philosophy that Marcus had no doubt taught him, which can be seen and exemplified by the 4 Stoic virtues: wisdom, temperance, courage, and justice. Wisdom comes through Maximus' ability to show good sense in situations of conflict. He calmly shakes his head to stop Cicero from obstructing the soldiers when he's being captured and sent to be executed. He knows there is nothing Cicero can do to make the situation any better for Maximus, and he would most likely put himself in a position of harm as well by doing so. He shows his ability to calculate time and risks before and during battle by doing what it takes to prevent the loss of soldiers, as he stands resourceful and won't waste the life of one of his men when he can strategically prevent it. To understand the value of life and to show discretion and respect for what it means to live, Maximus is a master at taking his time to observe and make the right choices to accomplish his tasks ahead of him, wisely choosing his strategy, not rushing into action without deeper consideration of the dangers ahead of him. Temperance, to do what's essential and keep moderation with your actions. Even with Maximus' opportunity to kill Commodus, the man responsible for Maximus' family's death, the death of his father Marcus Aurelius, and an attempted execution on Maximus himself, Maximus decides to spare Commodus, which even again put his own life on the line. He stands back to wait and reflect on his options, not to engage by his immediate impulses. One must know when to spare a life and when to take one. to show self-control over desires and contempt. Maximus battles by holding his extremes to the side and only does what he's required to do by the circumstances that nature has placed him in. Fighting as a gladiator, having to kill or to be killed, but when he spares a life, he does it without further harm. And if he can't avoid killing, he will do so without satisfaction, renouncing the applause of the crowd with his deliberate actions. Courage, through the realization that we shall all perish in our eventual demise, but that we keep on fighting nonetheless. Maximus had the courage and strength to keep on living to try and rescue his family from a brutal murder, traveling through days on days, dehydrated, weakened as time passed by, only to find his family being burned to death. His heart shattered and his loved ones departed. But he kept on going, remembering the words of Marcus Aurelius and from his newfound friend that he will meet his family again, but not yet. To show high level of endurance and confidence in your abilities to complete the tasks of life, despite the misfortunes and setbacks you may encounter. And as a gladiator, Maximus had to find his honest ways, being accepting of the reality he had been placed in, to keep his principles in check and not let the external forces meddle with his honor. But courage is also to find cheerfulness, just as Maximus did with his new friends he encountered, laughing and finding the joys of life, no matter how small they are. Justice is reflected in Maximus's ability to be honest with his men and friends, taking the time to speak humbly through this social virtue to his friend Marcus as he tells the story about his home, his family, and how they live. As a soldier, he is acting for the common welfare of mankind, and as a Stoic, he devotes his life and labor to contribute with kindness and fairness, to assist others who would require help and to do what is right without judgment and anger. Just that you do the right thing, the rest doesn't matter. Without justice as the crowning glory of the virtues, there would be no other virtue to follow. This is why Maximus needed to stay persistent with the acts and choices he assembled throughout his life, staying fair without deceiving others, being straight up and acting according to what nature demanded, as he is admiring the beauty of birds, feeling the soft touch of grass, and feeling what it means to be a part of this world without carrying resentment towards it. To see the world clearly for what it could be, what it can be, and then bring it to reality. Marcus Aurelius was a man who spent a lot of his time worrying, feeling stressed and conflicted. This is also why he wrote in Meditations, to cope with these impressions and to have a conversation with himself. But through these thoughts and values he spoke of, he had the will and strength to guide others. In a moment where Maximus's mind was exhausted from the battle he had just endured, Marcus asked calmly,
"How can I reward Rome's greatest general?"
Caring for his family and cherishing a simpler life, he requests to go home to see his wife and his little boy. Marcus expresses understanding and later reminds Maximus that his family is worth fighting for and encourages him to keep on going and act with strength. Marcus Aurelius cared for his people, no matter their social power, trying to find the light in everyone despite their dark deeds, even after Aurelius was betrayed by his closest friend, who wanted to have him dethroned and possibly killed. He told the Senate not to let any senator be harmed by his action, despite their contribution to the uprising. "I implore you, the Senate, to keep my reign unstained by the blood of any senator. May it never happen." Maximus, also being betrayed by his friend Quintus, decided not to seek vengeance upon his old friend and chose to set it aside from his moderation to violence. Concentrate every minute like a Roman, like a man, on doing what is in front of you with precise and genuine seriousness, tenderly, willingly, with justice, and on freeing yourself from all other distractions. Yes, you can, if you do everything as if it were the last thing you were doing in your life. And stop being aimless. Stop letting your emotions override what your mind tells you. Stop being hypocritical, self-centered, and irritable.
Nothing happens to anyone that he is not fitted by nature to bear.
We should treat the body rigorously so it's not disobedient to the mind, by constantly putting the body through hard work and difficulties, to let it be used for its purpose, deliberately seeking out challenges, building resilience and muscles, to build the mental strength, the fortitude to keep on going, to deal with misfortunes and adversity. Marcus and Maximus were not ignorant to the fact that life was hard, but the two Stoics knew that they should not look at life and the world as an enemy, but as an opportunity. What stands in the way becomes the way.
I knew a man who once said death smiles at us all. All a man can do is smile back.
Marcus Aurelius never wrote the quote that Maximus spoke of, even though he claimed it to be that way. But he did write a lot of times about death in meditations. Don't look down on death, but welcome it. It too is one of the things required by nature. Like youth and old age, like growth and maturity, like a new set of teeth, a beard, the first gray hair, like sex and pregnancy and childbirth, like all the other physical changes at each stage of life. Our dissolution is no different. So, this is how a thoughtful person should await death. Not with indifference, not with impatience, not with disdain, but simply viewing it as one of the things that happen to us. Maximus said to Commodus that no matter who you are, what you do, death will find you eventually. From the moment you are born, you are slowly dying. Death can be now as time passes. So you might as well smile and be accepting of your eventual demise. The core of Maximus' strength came from his connection to the Stoic philosophy, embodying it as much as he could through the hardship he had to endure. He reminds himself of the goodness Marcus had envisioned for Rome and its people.
There was a dream that was Rome. It shall be realized. These are the wishes of Marcus Aurelius.
To rid the city of the corrupt influence and to bring truth, love, and honesty to the streets and halls. As a Stoic, Maximus Decimus Meridius accepted his fate, destiny complete, without sadness or anger, and only tranquility with nature. The presence of Marcus and Stoicism left an impact on Maximus, and in the end, he left a mark on Rome, not only from his courageous acts, but from his loyalty to his friend Marcus Aurelius, the true emperor and Philosopher King.